check and see how many we've signed in. There we go, that works. Mic test 1 2. Mic test 1 2. Hello. test 1 2.
everyone. My name is Chris Lolis, and I'm the president of the Federation of Students. So this was supposed to be our fall general meeting. As you know, or may know, quorum for this meeting, the number of people who have to be in attendance is 200. We're not close enough to that number for us to go through with the formal meeting. Don't worry, we will still provide the taco mix bags. There will still be food, don't worry about that. And in the interest of transparency, we're still going to present the audit. We don't have to have a formal meeting for that to happen. So if Cheryl wants to come up here and walk us through the audit. So the audit is for the 2015-2016 fiscal year, and it shows all of the activities of the feds. And I will pass it over to Cheryl, who will explain the results of the audit.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Cheryl Flug. I'm the accounting manager for the Federation of Students. And I will be speaking about two main financial statements for our organization this evening. The Statement of Financial Position, also known as the balance sheet, and the Statement of Operations, also known as the income statement. The Statement of Financial Position shows the value of the items we own, the amounts we owe to other people, and the net assets, i.e. also known as retained earnings, of our organization. The Statement of Operations shows the results of our operations for the year, i.e. whether we had a profit or a loss for this year. So right now up on the screen is our Statement of Financial Position. So the first one is our general fund. That's our first column. This is where your fee of $48.95 for a full-time, no, it's more than that now, where full-time and part-time undergraduate fees is allocated to. All of our other operations for our commercial services and other services also flow through here. All monies are free to be spent as the corporation sees fit. The next funds are the Dental Health UPass Student Refugee Fund and Orientation. These funds are separated because the student fees collected for them are restricted. This means the funds must be spent only on their specific purpose, i.e. for the health and dental funds. The money can only be spent on premiums and the cost to administer the fund. The Society's fund is an aggregate of all of the Society's financial information. Because the Federation of Students has no control over the spending of these funds, they are also restricted. I just have a couple of quick highlights on page 2. So the next page. So you will see that under the 2016 column, our statement of worth has gone down by $100,000. If you go to the next page, that's because we had a loss in total of all the funds of $100,000 for the year, as you can see in the bottom second from the right. There was also a $15,000 loss on investments. That is the gain on the sale of our investments, plus there's a unrealized loss. It works out to approximately $15,000. And as a total, the general fund lost $355,000. This was a planned loss, as the CRA is looking very closely at not-for-profits right now and are ensuring that they are truly acting as not-for-profits. What they look at is, if we go back a page, is the amount that's the total for net assets. They want to make sure that that is only equal to 6 months to 1 year of our main source of revenue, and so we have put in place a plan to use up some of that to get us so that we are in line with that number recommendation from the CRA. Are there any questions from anyone? All right, so as always, these statements will be posted onto the Fed's website at feds.ca. And the results for your individual society will also be posted there. So if you're in arts, math, any of the individual societies, you'll also be able to look at how your society did this year. Probably be near the end of next week, as these are just drafts, and we have a couple of items we need to clean up with the auditors. So if there's no further questions, I think I'm finished.
thank you very much, Cheryl. AJ, do you have a... All right, so AJ Ray, who's the chair of our board, we can't have the meeting to formally approve the bylaws, but AJ would like to just walk us through what we would have done if the meeting happened. As well, these are free to come to the March general meeting, so you might be seeing them in a few months' time now. AJ, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. So this has been quite a long project. We initiated this around the start of the spring term. Essentially, while I can get the presentation up, we won't be approving them today. However, in March, we'll be bringing them forward. And if you would like to provide me any comments or questions, feel free to email me at board@feds.ca, and I'll be more than happy to incorporate your comments or sit down and have coffee with you if you'd like to discuss further or have any other questions, all right? So can we go to the next slide here? So essentially the rationale, bylaws were significantly changed in 2013. So essentially we just wanted to clean them up, make sure that they were operating the way they were supposed to, and also reflect current practice. And as you can see, we shortened all the words to try and lower our costs around interpretation. Our current bylaws sometimes would result in some sticky situations, and so we tried to eliminate most of those by rewording them. So just some highlights, if we can go to the next slide. So we established purposes for board and council. I know that sounds kind of silly, but they weren't in there before, and now we actually have clearly defined roles of what they're supposed to do. We've streamlined referenda, so it's to make it easier, and also open it up for alternative resolutions. I'm a big fan of alternative vote ways of resolving conflicts, so I don't think everything can be resolved through a referenda. So this opens the door for a lot more requisitions, which is a lot broader form of decision making. We changed the seating formula for council so it's actually understandable. I know we have a lot of math students at this university, but not all of us can read complex formulas. So this is now actually readable. We've also removed staff power to nominate executives and counselors. There was some discussion around this. They can also not vote in referenda. We just generally see this as sort of an accountability improvement. We've also removed all gendered language. So it's now all vague pronouns that we use throughout the bylaws, something that the majority of non-for-profit organizations have recommended, and we're glad to implement this now. We've also changed the numbering system so you can actually read it instead of using complex Roman numerals and numbers and letters. It's all just now numbers. And so it's article, section, clause, and subclause if necessary. All right, next slide. So governance improvements. We're proposing to rename the Vice President Internal to Student Life. And so that was requested by our VP Internal herself, and it also better reflects what that role actually does. We've also clarified the roles and gave it a common style, so every executive role now looks the same and operates the same way, but they each have clarified what they're actually supposed to be doing within the organization. Our elections can now take place in January. So big thing with this was elections were bound to happen just in the week before reading week. Now they can happen anywhere from the start of school to right before reading week. This allows a little bit more flexibility, and it was in response to a lot of students saying that they were busy right before reading week, and so we wanted to move it to, we're planning to hopefully move it to the third week in January, so that way the elections can happen at a lot less busier time and more students can potentially engage. We've also reduced accents lines in the executive roles. If any of you read the current bylaws, there's these large paragraphs of text and they just describe what one function of an executive's role is. And really that's untransparent. It's hard for someone who's not versed in these things to read it. So we've clarified those and put them in bulleted format and very short statements to make it easier to read. We've also expanded the chair of the board role, the role I occupy. We noticed there was sort of an organizational gap in transitioning people on boards, and so the role now will be expanded to make sure that other directors are trained properly in how to do their jobs, and this ensures better organizational continuity. We've also established a secretary of the corporation. It's been in the bylaws for a while, but the secretary role essentially is just to make sure that our governing documents and the minutes of our meetings are kept together, and so we've clarified what that role is and actually established some good accountability provisions there. We've also enabled general meetings to remove directors if they do see so fit. Really, it's an accountability provision. Often what would happen is directors could get acclaimed at a general meeting in March, and members would have no recourse until the next year if they felt that director no longer represented them. Next slide, please. There's also an amending process that we've implemented. This is a really good governance practice. So it essentially restricts for certain sections how the bylaws can be amended. So for Section 4 dues, which is controlling how you guys pay for Federation of Student Services, we can't just change that willy-nilly. It has to go through a vote by board, 2/3, and consulting with council, which is duly elected across the entire university. Also, Students' Council and elections and referenda can only be changed after a 2/3 vote of both board and council. That's a really good governance change as well. It really ensures that board can't interfere and encroach upon council as well. Finally, membership, general meetings, membership in external political organizations, which is a very complex term for essentially advocacy organizations at a broader provincial or national level. So for example, the Ontario Undergrad Student Alliance, which is a big provincial organization that represents us and has done a lot of good work for post-secondary students. And also amendments can only be changed after a general meeting votes for it. So that way we can't just change your membership classes without it coming to a general meeting. So yeah, I'll take any questions. If not, I guess I'll hand it back to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. All right, so that concludes the informal part of the meeting. So before we get to the food, I just want to point out around the room, you'll see a couple of these poster boards that are asking questions. Feel free, encouraged to go up to them and write your thoughts. There's one talking about bus stops on campus. What's your opinions on them? Talking about, do you have enough job options for applying to co-op? We are going to collect them, and we are going to use your feedback when we're advocating either to the government or to the university. So I encourage you all to take a look at those. Otherwise, if you have your food ticket and you want to make an orderly line over here by the food, orderly being the key word, you can help yourself to a taco bag. Thank you all for coming out, everyone.